Hello, I'm Dr. Marky Blummer once again, and we are on Module 4, if you can believe it. So this is our last module. The Module 4 objectives as you follow along in your PowerPoint, which is Module 4, Part 1, Allies, Advocacy, and Affirmative Practices. You'll see the objectives for Module 4. After that, you'll see just once again that I invite you to carefully review the module overview, read each of the readings, watch all of the videos. You'll see the materials for LGB, Allies, Advocacy, and Affirmative Practices. You'll also see the materials for T, Allies, Advocacy, and Affirmative Practices. I want you to note that there isn't really anything on P here because this is such a newly emerging population in terms of attention received. So there really isn't as much. There is in the online resources one online resource that I could find that I felt was important enough to share with you and was academic enough, and that is the Holding Out Help resource. So for the P, that's the only one that I have this week. As we move forward, I want you to consider the roles of an ally, an advocate, an affirming practitioner. I want you to be thinking about what do those roles have in common? How do they mutually influence each other? How might those roles be similar? How might they be different? And which of these roles really best fits you personally and professionally? So we're going to break down each one of these a little bit more now. Who is an ally? Well, a lot of the attention that you're going to read in the readings for this week will talk about being a heterosexual or a straight ally or a cisgender ally. So oftentimes the perception is that the ally is someone who is typically in a dominant position. So there's someone who holds heterosexual privilege, cisgender privilege, or in the case of relational orientation, they hold monogamous privilege. But I want you to kind of broaden your understanding of an ally, because even people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, questioning, polyamorous, polygamous, so on and so forth, they need to still be an ally for other people under that larger umbrella, the LGBTQIAP umbrella, or the queer umbrella, or the sexual, gender, and relational orientation umbrella. Because what you'll actually find is that sometimes people who, for example, identify as gay men might not be a very good ally to people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender identifying. So even though most of the stuff that you're going to read is going to talk about being a straight ally, and I do think that is important because those are people in positions that hold the most power, relatively speaking, to sexual and gender orientation minorities who do not hold as much power on average. I do want you to understand that it is also important that people in a sexual, gender orientation, relational orientation minority position, I believe, also need to be allies. So who are our allies? Well, they're people who support equal rights, gender equality, LGBT social movements. They challenge homophobia, transphobia. They believe that LGBT people are still facing discrimination, and thus they are socially and economically disadvantaged. And here's the most important thing. We've talked about this repeatedly, which is why we've focused so much on it in the class. They use their position and their privilege, which again is typically a dominant one, and the power that comes with these positions to fight homophobia, transphobia, heterosexism, and cisgenderism. Then I have a really nice video link for you from GLAD, which is one of your online resources that you'll have a chance to explore in this module. And really the focus here is on why being an ally matters. And so it's a quick little video. It's really nice. How do you be an ally? Well, you have to stay informed. You have to speak up. We're going to get into that when we get to advocacy. You have to be honest. You have to support equality. And again, back to kind of advocacy more, you need to come out as an ally. You also need to go through your own coming out process as, hey, I'm going to stand up for LGBTQIAP identifying people. and I'm going to be vocal about it. And I'm going to let people know that I am an ally. What about being an advocate? Well, the term ally and advocate are very similar. But an advocate is really that more vocal component, the publicly vocal component to being an ally. So it's more than just being an ally behind closed doors to people that identify as sexual, gender, or relational orientation minorities. An advocate is someone who publicly supports LGBT causes or policies. They plead on an LGBT person's behalf. So even if an LGBT person might not necessarily be out in a room of people that you might be in, or there might not be any in that room, you're still someone who's an ally and an advocate who's advocating for people, whether they're even vocal about advocating for themselves. And that's what's really challenging on the part of being an advocate. So there's someone who publicly recommends or supports LGBT causes, policies, and people. Finally, all of this relates to being affirmative practitioner. And here's the meat of it, right? We visited this at the very beginning of the semester. We're coming back to it. It's very timely as you have an affirmative practice paper coming up here at the very end of the class. Well, some of my colleagues, Rock, Carlson, and McGeorge, identify affirmative therapy as an approach to therapy that embraces a positive view of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer identities and relationships, and addresses the negative influences that homophobia, transphobia, and heterosexism have on the lives of LGBTQ clients. So what does this really involve? What does it really involve to be an affirmative practitioner? Well, truly it involves self-reflection, which is why so much of our class is focused on that. Reflecting on your own upbringing, attitudes, beliefs, your own privilege, recognizing you're biased. It involves getting involved. So you have to actually get involved. You have to become familiar with the issues that LGBTQIAP people face, and you have to strive for social justice and change. You need to create an affirmative setting. So if you're going to be an LGBT-friendly practitioner in your professional life, then you need to make sure that you have reading materials that are friendly this way. You need to have literature resources available. You need to have affirming language on your paperwork. You need to ask preferred gender pronouns and use a person's preferred gender pronoun as well as their preferred name. You can't just assume. Instead of asking about a husband or a wife, for example, you need to ask about a partner, okay? You need to be open about your commitment to providing affirmative practice for clients regardless of their sexual and gender identity. And finally, you need to, even with heterosexual and cisgender clients, colleagues, so on and so forth, you need to be an advocate for challenging heterosexism and cisgenderism, even with people that are identifying as part of the dominant society. Finally, I'm also listed some tips for you, which you can read more about. And one of the most helpful things in this particular module and part is that you're going to get to listen to about an hour-long lecture with one of my good colleagues who's also a family therapist based out of Guelph, which is near Toronto in Canada. And she's going to talk to you more about how to be an LGBTQ affirmative practitioner, which will be really good, again, for your paper as a resource and for you as you move forward. One of the biggest things that I want you to consider now as you leave this class here in just a week is how are you going to continue to access LGBTQIAP affirmative continuing education and resources? Because that's part of being affirming. Even I have to continually access these resources and learn more. How are you going to get involved in the community? And one way that I have linked here for you is to attend a UW Stout Safe Space training. And I've given that link to you, and you can do that this fall. So you can go to this training, and then you can be part of the formal safe zone and safe training, which can be really helpful as you go out there and try to help people in your professional lives and, on the side, on personal lives too. So again, I want you to consider, what are the roles of ally, advocate, and affirming practitioner have in common? How are they similar and different? And which of these roles really best fits you personally and professionally? And my hope is It's all three. So from here on out, I want you to go ahead and move into your own module overview, the readings, the videos, the PowerPoints, the discussion boards, and the participation activities. This is going to happen really quick. There's one discussion board and 3 participation activities. And then there's only one discussion board for the last part of this module that'll be due later this week. And then, of course, your big paper. All right. Thank you and enjoy.